What do you get when you mix an eccentric Canadian comedian with an abstract Australian director at a time when reality TV was becoming the domain? You get The Truman Show, a time when Jim Carrey was transcending wacky slapstick comedy and starting to develop more as a character actor, delivering a performance of great heart, warmth, and sincerity. Released in 1998, The Truman Show tells the story of Truman Burbank, a married man who has spent his entire life living in the seaside town of Sea Haven Island, where Truman starts to feel that the world surrounding him isn't quite right and like he's living in a TV show, where in reality, that's exactly what his life is, a broadcast show which is a huge international hit as the outside world can't seem to get enough of watching the wacky daily exploits of Truman, but at the cost of him living a lie. Truman goes on a journey for his freedom to escape the fake studio set that has been his life, where the show's creator, Christoph, played by Ed Harris, will do whatever it takes to make sure that the show will go on. So today we are going to be looking into this masterpiece of self-discovery, existentialism and self-awareness by looking into 10 things that you didn't know about The Truman Show. The movie that made me say, you know what? Jim Carrey actually is a pretty damn good actor when he's not too busy being funny. So let's check it out. Number 10. Original title. The first draft of The Truman Show was written in 1991 by New Zealand scriptwriter Andrew Niccol, and originally The Truman Show was a lot different to the finished movie. It was darker, moody, along with being more of a science fiction psychological thriller, where the main character starts living a paranoid existence, where he suspects that his life is being filmed and watched. Think of it as being less Jim Carrey and more Jacob's Ladder. The original title of the script was The Malcolm Show, presumably because the main character was called Malcolm, and unlike the movie in which the character was a 30-something-year-old Jim Carrey, at one stage in the script Truman, or rather Malcolm, was going to be a late teenager whom had just graduated high school. And the fake environment studio set wasn't some seaside town, but was actually originally meant to look like New York City. Eventually, Paramount Pictures picked up the script, and production to turn the script into a movie started in the mid-90s. Number 9. Potential director. The Truman Show was originally given a budget of $80 million, but Paramount felt that the budget may be too high and wanted to cut it down by $20 million. It was intended for Brian De Palma to direct, however he eventually left the project. Other directors considered for directing The Truman Show include Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton, Barry Sonnenfeld, and Terry Gilliam. However, Australian director Peter Weir became the movie's director when he agreed that he could make the movie for $20 million less than The Truman Show's allocated budget, taking it down to $60 million. Weir also insisted that the script shouldn't be so dark and would benefit from being more funny, and that depressing scenes should be replaced with more heartfelt moments. Giving Weir's career of directing character-driven dramas such as Picnic at Hanging Rock, Witness, and Dead Poet Society, he was clearly the right director for the job. Also, supposedly at one stage he was going to direct the 1979 Salem's Lot TV miniseries, but that didn't end up happening. But I'm still curious as to know what would Peter Weir's Salem's Lot would have been like. Number 8. Casting possibilities. Early in The Truman Show's production, one possibility for playing the role of Truman Burbank was Gary Oldman, along with Robin Williams, both of whom would have been interesting choices. I would imagine that Oldman would have brought out the tragedy of the character, whereas Williams would have explored the comical innocence of Truman. Peter Weir wanted Jim Carrey in the role after seeing him in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and felt that he would be right for the role of Truman. Ed Harris was cast at the last minute, as Dennis Hopper was originally cast as Christoph, but he dropped out. The irony is that Hopper would go on to star in Ed TV, a movie which came out 9 months later, which also explores society's growing increase in reality TV, along with mundane lives being broadcast as TV show entertainment. Also, Jim Carrey and Ed Harris never actually met, as Carrey's scenes were already filmed and wrapped up by the time Harris turned up for filming. So, does that mean that in the end scene where Truman is talking to Christoph just before he walks out the studio, that while filming that scene, Jim Carrey in his mind thought that he was communicating to Dennis Hopper and not Ed Harris? Number 7. The movie's production was put on hold for Jim Carrey. In the 90s, Jim Carrey was a huge star, and it seemed that many movie productions wanted him. From The Mask to Batman Forever, it was clear that people couldn't get enough of Carrey. And nowhere is this more evident than with The Truman Show. The movie's production was ready to start filming by 1995, but Jim Carrey was too busy making Liar Liar and The Cable Guy. So rather than recasting the part with an actor who was currently available, they instead decided to wait for Carrey. And it definitely paid off. Carrey himself must have also really believed in the movie, as he took a pay cut to star in it, as his going rate was $20 million at that time, but he starred in The Truman Show for $12 million. There was something of a wait for Jim Carrey to sign on the movie's production, so in the meantime Andrew Niccol reworked the script to cater more to Carrey. Although The Truman Show was intended to be released in 1995, it didn't come out until 3 years later in 1998. Number 6. Filming locations. Truman's seaside town where he lives is actually discovered as being a set located near Hollywood, within the movie's narrative of course. However, filming of The Truman Show actually took place in Seaside, Florida, on the Florida Panhandle in Walton County. The town seen in the movie was filmed at a planned community. Before filming commenced, Peter Weir was scouting locations in eastern Florida, but Weir wasn't satisfied with the scenery until his wife suggested Seaside, Florida, which had the look and feel that he was trying to achieve. So thus the location was chosen for filming. Some scenes were also filmed on Paramount sound stages in Los Angeles, particularly interior shots. Number 5. Interactive movie. Peter Weir had something of a genius idea of including the movie audience into the Truman Show movie, in which at all cinema screenings, the projection of the movie would stop, and instead footage of the movie audience sitting in the theatre watching the movie would be projected onto the screen, via cameras placed in the cinema. And thus the audience itself is literally part of the movie's universe, and part of the audience within the movie whom are observing Truman's life. All I have to ask is, why didn't they go through with that? That would have been clever and brilliant, and would have made The Truman Show less of a movie and more like an interactive experience, as it places the viewers as members of the outside world looking in on Truman's life, which would have given viewers even more of emotional connection. Although I would imagine that it would have been a bit jarring to be sitting there watching a movie and then to see your face on the big screen. I mean, I don't think cinema screens could survive my big bald head. Number 4. Real-life medical condition. Yes, believe it or not, but The Truman Show has led to a real-life medical condition called the Truman Show delusion, a term that was coined in 2008 by American psychiatrist Joel Gold, after meeting several patients with schizophrenia who generally believed that their lives were secretly a reality TV show. Some of the patients were actually quite delighted with the idea that their lives was an entertaining show, where sadly it also caused a lot of grief for other patients, and Gold even noted that patients could often feel tormented. Naturally, the condition was named after the movie, to which The Truman Show's writer Andrew Niccol stated that you know you've made it when you have a disease named after you. Jokes aside though, it must be a pretty terrifying condition. I mean, just imagine living your life thinking that the whole world is secretly watching you. Number 3. Design of The Truman Show. The look and design of The Truman Show was influenced by the paintings of artist Norman Rockwell, which very much looked like products of the 1940s, while also exploring obscure expressions of human emotion, making the mundane look surreal. As a fan of art, I actually really like his artwork and how he captures moments that would otherwise be normal, but somehow still makes them look odd. The production design also took inspiration from old postcards, particularly from the 40s, 50s and 60s. And I feel a lot of the landscape shots in The Truman Show do have an old postcard feel about them, which makes the world of the movie look distinct. Laura Linney, who played Truman's wife, or rather pretend wife, even looked through clothing catalogues from the 1940s in order to get the feel for the part. In other words, the world of The Truman Show is meant to look out of time, like an elegant era long gone. A world of the past living in the here and now. That was deep. Number 2, similarities to a Twilight Zone episode. Many people have noticed that there is lots of similarities between The Truman Show and the Twilight Zone episode Special Service, which was aired in 1989. Yeah, it's one of those 1980s revival episodes. And like The Truman Show, it's about a man who suspects that his reality isn't all that it seems, as he notices video cameras hidden in his surroundings, along with strange behaviour from those around him, till he realises that his life is a TV show. Undoubtedly, there are many similarities between the two stories. Many claim, even Wikipedia, that The Truman Show was influenced by the Twilight Zone episode. However, writer Andrew Niccol claims that he didn't get the idea for The Truman Show from any pre-existing movie or TV show. Number 1. Date pushed back to avoid Titanic collision. As if the production wasn't already delayed while waiting for Jim Carrey to finish making 2 movies that he was currently working on, The Truman Show was further delayed thanks to the Titanic itself, as the movie was set for a 1997 theatrical release. However, The Truman Show's production discovered that The Truman Show would be competing in the box office against James Cameron's romantic disaster movie Titanic. So to avoid sinking in the box office in anticipation that the Titanic would be the massive hit that it was, the production wisely chose to hold the release back and instead release it in the summer of 1998. Thankfully, the choice paid off, as The Truman Show was a massive success with rave reviews, making $261 million on its $60 million budget. And still to this day, many critics and fans analyze the themes and underlying tones of The Truman Show, along with its hidden meanings and interpretations, as there is definitely more than meets the eye in this story about Truman becoming a true man. It's warm, it's heartfelt, it's funny, and it's a movie that makes you think and explore possibilities. The Truman Show is without a doubt a classic, and right now it's probably more relevant than ever, especially considering mass media interest in reality TV has grown even bigger since the release of The Truman Show. So I say check it out, the movie is definitely a real eye-opener. Anyway, I'm Minty, and in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.